Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me again. So today's video is going to be on the Lyle and Eric Menendez case. This is going to probably be a very controversial case. I think there might be a lot of people who are both trying to support the Menendez brothers, and those that are also completely believing that they are guilty of their crime. If you are not aware of the crime, they are basically two brothers who are responsible for their parents' death. They shot their parents, basically. But compared to what you can find online or research, it's better to look at interviews that were done online, because it goes into more specific facts that are not actually written on the case itself. It's more just a basic outline of the situation, which kind of makes you a bit biased towards them being convicted. But if you look into interviews, and like I say, even court videotapings of the case, you will probably tend to think a bit differently in support of them a tiny little bit of the situation. But yeah, we'll get into it and then you can make your decision on if you agree or disagree with their crime. If you agree or disagree with the judge basically giving them a life sentence. So Lyle and Eric Menendez. If I keep getting this name wrong, I'm really sorry. It's really difficult for me to pronounce, to be honest. So Joseph Lyle Menendez was born January 10, 1968. Just happens to be my daughter's birthday. Obviously not the same year, but yeah. And Eric Galen Menendez was born November 27th, 1970. Together they are known as the Menendez brothers. And again, like I said, they were convicted in 1966 of murdering their parents, Jose and Mary Louise, aka Kitty Menendez. Their parents had moved from Havana, Cuba after the Cuban Revolution to the US. Just for the benefit of the rest of this video, I will be referring to Mary Louise, the mum, as Kitty. So, tiny backstory in the parents: they both attended Southern Illinois University. This is where they met and later married in 1963. After marrying, they moved to New York City. Jose would earn a degree there in accounting from Queen's College. Kitty was a full-time school teacher. When Joseph Lyle, aka Lyle, was born, Kitty quit her full-time job as a teacher and decided to be a full-time mum. They lived in New Jersey when Eric was later born. They then moved quite a lot around. They lived in Hopewell Township, and this is where the boys attended Princeton Day Youth School. So just to give you a quick summary of the situation, and then we'll delve deeper into the situation, the story, the case. I will also be inputting some videos of interviews with the brothers, mainly in the court case. Yeah. In 1976, in the summertime, when the family was still in New Jersey, the boy's cousin Diane Vandermolen came to stay. She was the one that Lyle had first confessed to about the abuse from his father. She told Kitty, but Kitty didn't believe her. She just believed it was a lie. Not sure why. And again, looking in later interviews, which again I'll put in, Kitty is not exactly a nice mother either. From what we know, in the interviews from the brothers, she comes across as a very strict and very unkind mother. In the interviews from the boys, again in the court case, it comes apparent that Lyle must have had what we would now determine as special needs, but back then obviously it's not heard of. And Kitty would basically be harder on him as a parent because she just didn't like the fact that her son was slow or just not managing properly. He wasn't on the same level as everybody else. And she basically treated her kids really bad. So after Diane told Kitty about it, she basically said that all that happened was that, apart from her refusing to believe it, she took Lyle upstairs and would not hear anything or whatever going on, not know what was going on, but basically after that, Lyle would never claim his dad had been like that again. He's just completely quiet, like it never happened. The boys would later say that the abuse only stopped when they became around 8 and 6. However, in a really weird turn of events, Kitty's eldest sister, so therefore the boys' auntie, Joan Vandermolen, claimed the allegations were true. She said this in the interview that she gave for People's Magazine in 2017. But Kitty still refused the allegations, and Milton Anderson claimed it was all rubbish. So even despite giving an interview, I don't know if it was from the word of mouth from the cousin Diane, but she was just like basically like, no, it's not happening, it's not true. Now, Jose's career, being an accountant, he managed to basically upgrade himself and managed to get a job as a corporate executive in 1986. So this would mean the family would move again into Beverly Hills. And this is where Eric would attend Beverly Hills High School. Coincidentally, and I'm not sure what relevance this has, but it has been noted that 2 weeks before the murder, Eric and his friend Michael Joyce took part in the 1989 Boys Junior National Tennis Championship. Eric reached the second round of qualifying and Joyce reached the quarterfinals. Lyle, on the other hand, attended Princeton University. However, he was put on academic probation, having bad grades, and was later suspended for plagiarism, which again, like I said in the interviews, we hear that Lyle was partially slow, special needs situation, so that would explain why he had bad grades. Now I'm going to just quickly go into the case of this whole situation, of what happened, what has been documented, and then we're going to try and get into a bit more of the situation. So in August 1989, Jose and Kitty were in the den of their mansion in Beverly Hills when Lyle and Eric came to see them. They were armed with shotguns. Jose was shot 6 times, including one fatal shot in the back of the head with a Mossberg 12 shotgun. Kitty was shot 10 times. It's been understood from the crime scene investigation, I guess, that she was crawling on the ground and crying. I'm not sure you can determine that, maybe from the boys, when Lyle went to his car to reload the gun, and he fired the last fatal shot into her cheek. Now, the boys had apparently stayed at the house expecting for the police to come. They assumed that they would come, because they assumed that due to the sounds of the shotguns, people would be reporting sounds of gunshots, in the area, so that maybe, they expected the police to be around the area. When the police did arrive, the brothers maintained their one statement that the murders had happened when they were out. Their alibi was that they had been to the cinema to watch Batman and had participated later in a Taste of Allah festival in the Santa Monica Civil Auditorium with a friend. The police did not test their hands for gun residue at the time, even though this would have proved they would have fired the guns. Maybe it's because of the alibi they gave, I'm not sure. One strange thing, which is one of the reasons why the case is so 50-50, is that after their parents died or were killed, they went on incredible, crazy shopping sprees. Now, their parents were good for money, they had a lot of money, they were very well off. So literally after that, the boys were basically going off spending on money on everything like condominiums, businesses, travel, going to the Caribbean, to London, buying Rolexes, buying Porsches, cars. Lyle even purchased the Church Springs Sweet Cafe, which was a buffalo restaurant in Princeton. Eric hired a full-time tennis coach and would compete in tournaments in Israel. Again, in the interviews, you'll hear about him doing well in sports or not so well. It just depended on the situation.
Do you recall, you remember that you were tested for hearing problems when you were in the 6th grade or so, when you were about 13?
Yes.
And you remember testifying that you weren't told the results of that accurately by your mother at the time. Is that right?
No, I wasn't.
And you now know that those tests showed that you had some problems.
Yes.
What was your mother's reaction, if any, concerning your performance in the schoolwork she was doing with you at home after that testing? Did it change in any way?
Well, she got a lot. I started to do a lot more work. There was a lag in a period of time. There was intense training before I got into PDS for a few years. And then it lagged off a little, and then it just came on again. And she got a lot more intense about the work I was doing and how much work I was doing and so on.
How did she treat you after the hearing test as compared to before? Was there any difference?
Yes.
And what was the difference?
She would just yell at me a lot more and tell me that I was too stupid to understand, and a long lecture would probably slap me a couple of times, I don't know.
And this is not belt
No.
punishment list. Okay.
Mr. Menendez, are you related to Eric Galen Menendez, who's seated here?
He's my brother.
And were your parents Mary Louise Menendez and Jose Menendez?
Yes.
And were you born January 10th, 1968?
I was.
If you look to the right, you will see various photographs of homes that you lived in. Do you recognize more expectations of you also?
Definitely.
Was one of the things that your father made decisions about with regard to your sports training the food that you would eat?
Yes.
And throughout your childhood, did his ideas about the proper foods change?
Regimented because we had court time, swimming time, and I think I played tennis like 3-4 times a week, sometimes more on the weekends. And then there would be times when my dad would just decide I play tennis all day.
As you were growing up, and I'm directing your attention now to when you were living in the Muncie house and then later in the Pennington house, were there pornographic films that were made available to you and your brother?
Yes.
And where did these films come from?
My dad brought him home with other videos.
The mansions in Beverly Hills were left unoccupied. The brothers would buy adjoining condominiums in the Marina del Rey. They would even dine in expensive restaurants. It is known that together they spent $700,000 before they were finally arrested. Now, the family members say that even though they spent so much money so quickly after their parents were killed, it was just considered normal behaviour because that's how the family was, basically. Because even in the interviews, you see how they move from house to house to house easily without having issues buying a house. Now, the defence of the boys, which again you can get into later into the interviews themselves, I am not going to put the full interviews or the full court case videos online because it gets into detail, which I think is quite graphic. They show pictures which is quite graphic. So if you want to look that up, you can by all means look anywhere on the internet for that. But basically their murder defence was that they killed their parents out of fear that the father would kill them if they would tell the authorities of the abuse they'd been going through. And this is just not abuse, it's physical, emotional, mental abuse. The prosecutor's side of the story is that they killed their parents for their multi-million-dollar inheritance. Now, at first they were given separate trials for the same crime. However, because both these juries became deadlocked, which means that the jury cannot find... for example, there might be 20 people in the jury. If there's 10 saying yes, 10 saying no, it usually means that there's a mistrial because you can't come to an agreement, which is deadlock. So the case was forced to mistrial. However, prosecutors felt that this was not good enough justice, so they would be joined together in these trials and trialed together. In this situation, they were both found guilty. However, the judge did basically say that they would exclude all evidence of the sexual abuse case from the father. They said it was inadmissible, basically. I'm just watching the spider crawling around me. I'm not an arachnophobe, but come near me, I'm not going to be happy. Now, during the investigation, the police tried to focus their search on suspects who had motives to kill Kitty and Jose. And they also investigated potential mob links, which it doesn't really go into a lot, but there was suggestion there. Maybe that's where the money came from. I'm not sure. As the investigation continued, they realised that the better possible suspects were the brothers. And that was mainly due to the rapid spending that they'd done after the killings. In an attempt to get a confession from Eric, police arranged for his friend Craig Signorelli, which I can't find a picture for, but I'll try my best, to go undercover and wear a wire during a lunch with Eric at the local beachfront restaurant. Now, obviously, when Signorelli asked Eric, "Did you kill your parents?" he obviously denied it at first. However, Eric would later confess to his psychologist, Jerome Oziel, who would then tell his mistress, Judalon Smith. Due to this, in a turn of events, it was actually Judalon Smith that would confess this crime to the police after Oziel broke up with her. And she did this in basically a fit of rage and revenge. Therefore, Lyle was arrested on March 8th in 1990. And then Eric, maybe feeling out of guilt or panic, turned himself in 3 days later, after returning to Los Angeles from Israel. They were both held without bail and jailed separately. In August 1990, Judge James Albrook ruled the tapes of the conversation between Eric and Oziel were admissible, meaning they could be used during the trials. Oziel stated that Lyle had threatened him by reporting it to the police that Oziel had violated doctor-patient privilege. It usually is the situation that I understand that as a psychologist, if you confess something to a psychologist, they technically have patient privilege. Only if the person is a danger to themselves or other people in a crazy way in the situation, right? They would report it to the police. But other than that, you know, it's almost like talking to a priest. You have to keep quiet. Judge Albrook's ruling was appealed, which would mean that the proceedings were delayed for almost 2 years because of what was going on. But when the Supreme Court of California ruled out in August 1992, the majority of the tapes were admissible, with the exception of the tape that Eric had discussed the murders. After that decision, in Los Angeles County, the grand jury indicted in December 1992, charging the brothers with the murders of their parents. So now we're going to the trials and the court. So the Menedez case became a national drama when Court TV was allowed to film inside the court. They were given permission to broadcast the trials in 1993. The defense lawyer, Leslie Abramson, had stated that the brothers killed their parents out of fear of their lives after a long time of abuse at the hands of their parents, and especially sexual abuse at the hands of their father.
The originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
my dad.
Okay.
My dad.
Verona, can I ask a leading question?
If you don't ask.
My dad.
Wait 1 second, Mr. Menedez. Okay, let me ask.
No, he was in the process of answering, so there's no need to ask him.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me.
And Did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted it to stop.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes.
And when you were in Israel in 1990, did you feel that seeking help from your brother was why your brother was in jail?
Yes.
Pornographic films that were made available to you and your brother?
Yes.
And where did these films come from?
My dad brought them home with other videos.
And would you and your brother sneak and watch them, or how would you see them?
No, my dad would, we would just watch them together.
With your dad? And what's the earliest age that you remember being shown films like this?
I remember some films in Muncie at the end. Mostly I remember in Pennington House.
And what types of things would be portrayed in these films?
It was mostly violence, sexual violence. I remember a whole bunch of the films. There would be films with gang rapes. There was one film centered around a woman that was riding her bike and was abducted and brought to a forest and gang raped. And there was another different film where there was three females attacking another female, and the same in the men's locker room with 3 guys and another guy, violent sexual acts. And there was another film that it was like a film within a film, where this filmmaker was making a lot of money selling these violent sexual pornography that he would take place in a red room. And then the premise of the film is they eventually find out that the killings and the sexual violence in the red room is real, and that's why the films are so good. And there were lots of them.
Did your father show these films to other people beside you and yourself and your mother?
Only as like just shock value.
How do you mean? Who would he show them to?
He showed them to that I remember Peter Goldsmith. He showed them to neighbors in the Pennington house when they would come over at times. It seemed like he would tell me in advance he was going to do this, and it was more to embarrass my mother than anything else. But he would just put on this video, and people would sort of settle in, and then he'd shock them. He showed them for some of my friends that would come over every once in a while. He'd just throw one on, and it really wasn't very bothered by him, and we would watch them together.
Do you ever take photographs of you and your brother?
Yes.
And what would the circumstances be in which he would take photographs?
He would take photographs of us, our private parts.
And would he have you come in and pose for these photographs, or how would that happen?
I would just, if we were in the showers or bathtub or changing, he would just use the same camera that my mother used, and then he would come in and take just a photograph or two, and he wouldn't say anything, and then he would leave.
Do you ever show you those photos?
No.
Excuse me.
Mom and Dad, myself, the Baralt family, children, and Aunt Terry and Uncle Carlos.
Could you just identify that for the record so that we don't have to...
222, Your Honor.
All right.
.224?
That's Eric.
25?
What was the answer?
Mother, boys, and Eric and myself. Sorry.
And do you recognize some mark on your brother?
The birthmark? The birthmark on his right wrist.
Now, when you said that your dad would come in periodically and just take pictures of you, your children without clothes also appear to be children without heads. Is that correct?
Yes.
And when he would take photographs of you of this nature, would he seem to be directed at taking photos of your faces?
No.
Or would he?
He would take photographs of your genital area, the lower half of your body, or you're bending over, or just different parts of your positions is what I never really knew.
Isn't that really after all? Isn't that what it was about, Tony? I mean, wasn't it about the amount of absolute control and the ruthlessness in terms of just completely, almost being like an automaton who was focused on I mean, it's like, do you think your father had any sense of what he even was doing to you? Or do you think that your father basically was so much on automatic pilot in terms of being focused on control and domination that did he not care? Or do you not know? What do you think? Eric, how about you saying something here? You haven't said a whole lot. What do you think? I just don't like hearing it. What does that mean? I don't like hearing it. You don't like hearing what? I don't like hearing these things about my father. What do you feel? Upset. Yeah. Hurt? Sad what? Well, I pushed them out of my mind. And my father and my mother were two people that I love, and I just don't like that. It doesn't matter what they were or what they actually were. Whether it's a fantasy or it wasn't. They were very apparent in my mind before this and led up to the fact where I had no choice. I would have taken the other choice. Because I look back on it and realizing what people were worth and so on, I much regret it. I may not have had a choice at the time, but I regret it now. And I simply, I like the image that I had from when I was 14 or so. Where, I had a mother and father that loved each other and loved me, and it was that kind of relationship. And I try to bring that back in my mind and pretend like it was like that, and I like it. And it's simple and easy, and I don't like hearing my father put in this sort of way. It's too painful. Talk about it. I can't. Try. He was somebody that I loved and almost had no choice to do what I did. And I hate myself for doing it. And I understand why it was done when I came rationalized it. Because, because of the love that I had for my mother, and how it was such a misconception of the family, no one else. Yeah, no one understood
and having to listen to the fights, and somebody be yelling and screaming and all this taking place downstairs, and finding blood on the bed and different things. I just tried to rationalize it, and I break down every once in a while because it's really difficult. I love my father, and I'll never love anyone like him. And it's more difficult because of my mother, because I realize what an amazing tragedy of her life was compared to what it could have been because of my father. And I hate him for that, and I love him. And it was something that was beyond control. And
What was beyond control? Did you have to tell me?
eventually it had to happen. It was basically ruining my life, and I get slaps, and it was putting another through torture, and it got to a point where he was amazing, and he would do great things for me, and I wouldn't understand why.
What's where you did it?
In her closet.
Where was the closet?
In her room. It was a long, very narrow, long closet. She kept a lot of her clothes.
And is that because you liked to do schoolwork in her closet? You chose that as a place to do it?
No, she put me there when she felt that I wasn't concentrating hard enough, or was having trouble concentrating, or just wasn't doing it well enough to how she liked, or when she left the house and she felt I wasn't sick. She wanted to make sure I did my work.
You say when she left the house and she felt you weren't sick. What type of days or what time of day would that relate to?
That related to during the day, late morning, afternoon, when she had left the house.
Was this?
Can you specify what time frame you're talking about?
Yes. What age or ages are we talking about when your mother would have you do work in the closet?
When I was 12, 13, 14.
Now, the days when she'd leave the house and have you be in the closet, were these weekends or school days?
The school days when she would leave the house, it's when I was homesick, but she didn't feel I was that sick.
And what was the purpose of you being, if you know, of you having to be in the closet on these school days when she was out of the house?
She wanted to make sure I didn't watch TV or do anything that I wasn't supposed to do, and made sure that I did my work.
So you were supposed to do homework in the closet?
Homework or different tests that she would give me, or assignments that she would give me.
And was there a chair and a table or a desk in the closet?
No, sometimes she'd give me a clipboard
A clipboard?
so that I could write on.
And for how long a period of time would you have to remain in the closet after she had put you there?
Until she let me out.
And how long would that sometimes be?
Sometimes it would be an hour, sometimes it would be all day when she left, 7 hours. Sometimes I fell asleep in there overnight.
And when, apart from the days when she wasn't there and she put you in the closet, where would she be on other occasions when she'd put you in the closet to do your schoolwork? Where would your mother be?
Usually across the way on her bed.
In the same room?
Yeah, the closet was at the very back, past the bathroom, past my dad's closet, down this teeny little hallway in her room, and her bedroom would be on the other side of the room.
So she'd be in her bedroom?
I mean, I couldn't tell where she was always, but when I called out, she was usually on her bed.
And did this closet have a solid door or a door you could look through?
I could peek through the bottom under the door, but it was a solid door.
And what would happen, Mr. Menendez, if while you were in the closet and your mother was home, you had to go to the bathroom?
I wasn't supposed to go to the bathroom unless I called out and asked her. If she wasn't home.
I'm talking about when she is home. Okay. Let's say she's there, okay? She's in her bedroom.
Yes.
And you have to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
What would you do?
I'd have to call out and tell her that I needed to go to the bathroom.
And would she then come and let you out of the closet and let you go to the bathroom?
Depended
Depended on what?
on whether she felt like letting me go to the bathroom at that time. She'd ask me what number I had to go, and if I had to go number 2, usually she'd let me out.
And if you had, and the number 1 was urinating?
Yes.
And if you had to do that, would she let you out?
Sometimes she would say, I'll let you out in a few minutes or later or whenever.
Did she ever provide you with a receptacle of some kind that you were supposed to use in the closet?
Yes, that's after I had complained that I couldn't.
You have to back off the mic. Try to sit back. Just sit back in the chair. Okay, try to stay there. Okay, go on. The receptacle in the closet.
It was a plastic bin with a yellow cover. It was a see-through type of thing.
And what was it for?
It was for when I used to go to the...
Complained?
Well, I'd complained when she left the house, she'd put me in the closet, and I didn't know I couldn't leave the closet to go to the bathroom. And she got very angry at me one time when I left the closet. And I said I used the excuse that I needed to go to the bathroom that time, even though I didn't. And so she gave me a bin to go in.
If she wasn't at home, how did she know that you left the closet to go to the bathroom, whether you really went to the bathroom or it was just an excuse? How did she know you left the closet?
She used to put this little piece of paper at the corner of the closet door, so that the closet door opened from the outside, the paper would fall down.
If it opened from the outside?
If it opened, the paper would fall down on the outside.
Okay. And so there was an occasion when you had left the closet and she found out?
Yeah, I didn't know this until after I found out on the second time what it was. I had left the closet and I watched TV and I got something to eat and I used the restroom and I came back and she accused me of leaving the closet and I said, no, I didn't. And she grabbed me and she started shaking me and she said, don't lie to me, don't lie to me. And I didn't know how she knew, but I admitted that I left the closet. And the second time is when I saw the piece of paper.
The second time you left the closet when she wasn't home? Is that what you mean?
Yes. I didn't understand how she knew that I had left the closet the first time.
Okay. Now, did you use this receptacle that she provided?
Yes.
Did you ever use anything else?
I didn't enjoy using I didn't really want to use this because I'd have to give it to her. And so I kept one of those plastic bags hid it in the closet, so when I had to go in there and I had to go to the bathroom, I could use my own and I could pretend that I never went.
Feel about him when those things were going on?
I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all. I didn't want those things to happen.
And were there other things that he was encouraged to do to you by your father that made you not like him also?
Yes.
What things would he do with your father's encouragement?
Sustained.
Well, did you hear your father egging him on to do things?
Yes.
What would he egg him on to do?
When Lau and I were roughhousing, he would tell Lau where he should grab my joint so that it hurt most, where he should hit me, different things like that.
And did Lyle hit you and grab you when you were little?
Yes.
So was he your favorite person during those years?
He wasn't my favorite person.
Did he eventually become your favorite person in the family?
Yes.
Did your relationship with him over the years change?
Yes.
Now, you said that based on these things that he did to you that he talked about, that you didn't like it and didn't like him. Did your attitude about those things and him change?
Eventually.
And what changed them? Do you understand what I'm talking about?
Yes. I resented Lau for a few years because of the things that he had done to me. And once the things with Dad started to happen, then I felt real guilty about that.
You felt guilty about what?
Resenting Lyle.
Why did you feel guilty about resenting Lyle when, I take it you mean the sexual things with your father were happening?
Yes.
So why did you feel guilty about resenting Lyle?
Because I thought that this was supposed to be natural when my dad explained to me why it was supposed to be, and Lyle didn't explain to me any of those things, and so I thought that it wasn't.
Was there a time that Lyle rescued you from drowning?
Yes. Or in Pennington, she wasn't Dad's ally.
Are you happy about what you had done?
No, it was beginning to hit me what I had done when I went back to the house that night, and I couldn't accept that.
My question was, were you happy about
No,
it?
I was not happy.
Have you ever been happy about it?
No. There were.
Why don't you tell us what the things were that you and Lyle were going to say to the police?
That we went to the movies, and then we went to meet Perry at the Civic Center. And I remember Lyle.
Just that you went to the movies.
Yes.
That you went to meet Perry at the Civic.
And then I went home for my ID.
Right. Is that it?
No, there's one other.
What's the one other?
He told me to say that we parked in the back.
He was described as a perfectionist and a paedophile. Their mother was described as an enabling, selfish, mentally unstable, an alcoholic and a drug addict who encouraged her husband's behaviour and was also violent towards the brothers, which again you can hear in the tape recordings of, like I said earlier, how Lyle would be forced to sit in a closet in his mum's room to do homework or work assignments that she felt were good enough for him to do, basically, because he was suffering in school. And he would have to ask permission to come out of the bathroom, out of the closet, so that he'd go to the bathroom. Sometimes she would let him, and sometimes she would tell him to wait, or, when I'm ready, basically. Some occasions it would depend on if he was having a number one or a number two. If it was number two, he might be allowed, and if it's number one, it would be like, wait. It got to a point where, as Lyle states, he would be given some kind of container with a bag in it to basically go, but he didn't want to use it. I think he felt disgusted or embarrassed, obviously. If he would play sick from school because he didn't want to go into school for whatever reason, he states that she would put him in the cupboard again, and she would place a piece of paper on the outside of the door that could be visible to her if he had opened the door to get out to go watch TV or have something to eat or go to the toilet without permission. Again, control, manipulation, and fear. This child, he was only little. So, yeah, and like I said, just completely refusing to believe the allegations of the abuse from the dad. It's just, yeah, she would apparently shout at him, at Lyle, even at Eric sometimes. It was just not a happy house. Now, again, even though they have killed people, some allegations to back up their story or their defence was that they were backed up of their testimony by family members. The brothers' cousins, Andy Cano, who said that as a child Eric told him about the sexual abuse. They both described this act as I'm not going to say it. Diane van der Molen, the cousin that Lyle had originally confessed the abuse of his father to, stated that she told Kitty about Jose's inappropriate behaviour of Lyle, even though Kitty had denied it all. As physical evidence, the defence presented photographs of Lyle and Eric's genitalia that was allegedly taken by the father when they were children. And again, I have seen a video of this on the court case, and it is very graphic. They don't blur anything, and I have seen it. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with putting these pictures up or this part of the video. I'm either going to blur it or not, or leave it out. But the pictures were there. They were visible, basically. And what's worse is that people say that you can tell by behaviour, body expert behaviour, if people are lying. Now, there's a video that I haven't looked at about this body behaviour analysis, but from what I can see, Lyle in particular gets very upset when talking about the abuse that he went through. It's not crocodile tears. You can see him getting very emotional. His breath is hyped up, and he can barely talk at times. He's very tense, and it's quite, if I was on the jury, I'd be finding it hard to believe that he was lying. I'm going to be truthful. Eric at first seems a bit too laid back, but then when he gets into the pictures of what was happening, he gets clearly uncomfortable. Like I said, I'm not declaring that he should be, it should be a case where it was like, oh yeah, kill the parents, but from the evidence of the people around them, the statements of the people around them, what they saw, experienced, it's like, yeah, it's hard to determine who was right and who's wrong. Obviously, it's not great taking a life, but they completely firmly say that they were in fear of their lives, and someone comes in later to kind of back up the behaviour of their father in a negative way, which we'll get into soon. So, like I said, the prosecution just still demands it was all for financial gain. However, the defence does claim that the brothers were not even aware that they were going to get the inheritance anyway, maybe due to the crappy behaviour of their parents and the treatment of the boys. They just thought, you were just going to squander the money or just give it away. Lyle's prosecutor, Pam Bosnick, let's just say she's not, I don't know if she's still alive or not, I've not really looked at it, but when I read her statement of why this cannot be true, I was shocked. But again, this is back in the 1980s, 70s, 80s. So obviously back then people just had a really closed-minded idea of crimes and who was allowed to commit them, or not allowed to commit them, but who could possibly commit them. So when she said this, I was like, what? So she states that they definitely killed the dad because, and I quote, men could not be raped because they lacked the necessary equipment to be raped. Now, let's not get into it. But let's just put it this way, it's her statement is completely psychotic. Yeah. Eric would later on testify that a couple of weeks before the night of the killings, he told his brother about the abuse he was experiencing, which had led to several confrontations with the family. They also testified that the father threatened to kill them if they didn't keep the secret, which again, they're maintaining the same situation story all the time. They're maintaining that the father was like this, the mother was like that, there was threats there, the abuse they experienced. Ooh. Just gonna move away from that. Just think it's the mama. Oh hell no, you are not coming near me. Oh no, you're not. Back. So I was gonna keep the light off to set the scene, but this spider is doing laps around me, so I'm just gonna keep it on. Again, I'm not an arachnophobe, but come near me, I'm gonna lose me. So yeah. Whew. Like I said, they maintain that they were basically killing these parents because of the crimes they'd done to them, the hate they had created, fear of life, all negatives, and it was just like, we just don't feel like they're going to leave us alone, so we're just going to get rid of them, basically. Now, I know people are probably thinking that, by the time they were in university or they were older, get on with your life kind of thing, move on, but maybe there was that hidden anxiety that, it still happened and they were still, they were still alive, and in a way, the shopping spree, I mean, if you look at any psychologist, they might just say that it was like a shock in the system, that they just wanted to spend the money to, get away from what was actually happening. Yeah, I don't know. Bipolar disorder makes you have manic phases, but then you'll be happy and spending. I don't know. But yeah. They just basically said that they became paranoid that they would become by their own parents at some point. Eric has gone on statement on the stand to say, as I went into the room, I just started firing. The trial ended with 2 deadlocked juries. As a result, the Los Angeles County District Attorney, Gil Garcetti, basically just decided immediately the brothers would be retried. The second trial would be kept out of public eye, partly because Judge Stanley Weisberg did not allow cameras in the courtroom. In the second trial, Weisberg relied upon a legal decision by the Supreme Court, an unrelated case, making sure to do limited testimony about the sexual abuse claims. And did not allow the jury to vote on manslaughter charges instead of murder charges. Both of the brothers were eventually convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In the penalty phase of the trial, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, mainly due to the fact that the brothers had no prior criminal history prior to this situation, this case, the judge was quick to note that the defence was not a factor. The abuse defence was not a factor in this case, but it decided not to impose the death penalty. They were being in 2 different prisons, basically. And since they were considered to be maximum security risks, they would be separated from other prison mates. They remained in separate prisons until February 2018. This was when Lyle was moved to Mule Creek State Prison, to the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, where they were housed in separate units. So they were still in the same prison, but in different parts. Rick spent some of his sentence in Pleasant Valley State Springs Prison in Coalinga, California. On April 4th, in 2018, however, Lyle was moved into the same housing as Eric, where they were met for the first time after all this time of being imprisoned separately. They had been serving 22 years of their life sentence. Apparently, witnesses and onlookers state that when they saw each other, they burst into tears and hugged each other. So the unit where they are now is apparently a household that is reserved for inmates who agree to participate in education and rehabilitation. Now, of course, they did go for appeals. After exhausting all these routes so far, they filed for habeas corpus in the United States District Court. 4 years later, the Magistrate Court recommended the refusal of their petitions. And on September 7th in 2005, a 3-judge panel denied both habeas corpuses. The brothers filed documents again, seeking a new hearing based on new evidence, which is what I mentioned earlier. A band member called Rossello stated that he had been drugged by Jose Menedez when he was visiting the Menendez's home when he was 14. Now, one strange thing about these boys is that, like any other prisoner, you get to write, I guess, and you get fans from people who believe in you and fall in love with you. And like any other person, they fell in love with 2 ladies. Well, one brother, one lady. So on July 2nd, 1996, Lyle married Anna Erickson. At a ceremony by Bramson and his aunt Marta Menendez, officiated by Judge Nancy Brown. They did divorce on April the 1st, 5 years later. Erickson discovered that Lyle was allegedly having an affair with another woman. A few years later, Lyle married Rebecca Sneed at a ceremony in a visiting area of Mule Creek State Prison. They had known each other for around 10 years before their engagement. And then in 1999, Eric married Tammy Ruth Sackerman at Folsom State Prison in a prison waiting room. This is what Tammy said about it. Our wedding cake was a Twinkie. We improvised. It was a wonderful ceremony until I had to leave. That was a very lonely night. And then in October 2005, in an interview with ABC News, she described her relationship with Eric as, and I quote, something that I've dreamed about for a long time. And it's just something very special that I never thought I would have. Zuckerman self-published a book. They said it would never make it. My Life with Eric Menendez, where she said on Scene It Ends, in an interview with People's Magazine, she stated, not having sex in my life is difficult, but it's not a problem for me. I have to be emotionally attached, and I'm emotionally attached to Eric. My family does not understand. When it started to get serious, some of them just threw up their hands. Zuckerman and Eric do have a daughter, and they visit Eric every weekend, apparently. She calls her dad her Earth Dad. I don't know what that means or why she calls him that, but yeah. He states that he can't think about his sentence, he just wants to think about his wife and his child. He breaks into a cold sweat when he thinks about everything that's been going on in his life apart from his family. So yeah, like I said, I'm going to try to invert some videos for you. Personally, if you were to ask me, if I was on the jury, I don't know. There's a lot of things that kind of point towards why they did the crime. But it's just one of those things where you weren't there. I don't know. There's a lot of people that were backing them up, and you know, from what is written about them, they didn't seem to have any issues in school, as in nobody reported their behaviour being naughty or anything like that, but at the same time nobody reported them being, from what I've seen, you know, closed off. But yeah, only they know what happened that night, and they're still serving the sentence as far as I know. So I mean, they do even have I think it's a support page, which I'll try and put here, to try and get them out, to try and get them a retrial. So I don't think they'll ever stop trying to get a retrial or a rehearing, whichever you call it. You can decide on what you think. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. If you believe that they did it in self-defense, if you believe they did it because they just wanted to be greedy. Yeah, I'm not going to say mine because I might get a lot of controversy for it. But yeah, I know where my allies lie. But yeah, I hope you somehow enjoyed it and found it interesting. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and again, comment down below your thoughts, and subscribe as always. And I'll see you next time in my next video.